Officer Liam Archer had seen it all. Endless nights patrolling quiet streets, the constant buzz of radio calls, and the familiar hum of his patrol car. His life was routine. But everything changed the night he was paired with Sable, a K9 with a past that no one was willing to talk about. She wasn't like the others he had worked with. Most dogs were friendly, eager to please, but Sable, she was different. Sable was intense. Her amber eyes, always sharp, seemed to see through everything. Her posture was tense, as if she was always waiting for something bad. But there was something about her, a quiet strength that Liam couldn't ignore. She was more than just a dog. She was a partner, and Liam could feel that the moment he clipped the leash to her harness. That first night on patrol, everything seemed calm. The hospital was quiet, the lights dimmed and the halls empty. The night shift had begun, and Liam wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. Just another boring night, he thought to himself as he walked beside Sable, her tail still, and her eyes scanning every corner. They passed through the main hallway, making their usual rounds. But then, without warning, Sable stopped. Her body went rigid, her ears perked up, and she turned to stare at the ICU ward. Liam paused, confused. "What's wrong, girl?" he muttered, tugging lightly on her leash. Sable didn't move. Her amber eyes locked onto the ward like she had seen something no one else could. It wasn't the usual alert she gave when she smelled drugs or sensed danger. It was something else, something more. Liam knelt down beside her, his voice low. "What's going on, Sable?" he asked softly. Sable only stared, her focus unbroken. It was unlike anything Liam had ever seen. His instincts told him to trust her, but he couldn't figure out why she was acting this way. "Come on, girl," he said, tugging at the leash again. But Sable didn't budge. She was fixated, her gaze unyielding. For a moment it felt like time had stopped. The hum of the hospital, the whispers of passing nurses, even the soft beeping of monitors faded into the background. All that existed was Sable and the ICU ward in front of them. Liam stood there, unsure of what to do. He knew this dog had instincts far beyond what he could understand. But this was different. She was warning him about something. But what? Everything. "Okay, Officer Archer," came a voice from behind. It was Nurse Kayla walking toward them with a tired smile. But when she saw Sable's rigid stance, her smile faltered. "Yeah, just a little strange," Liam replied, not taking his eyes off the dog. Sable had finally broken her stare, but her body was still tense, every muscle wound tight. The hospital was quiet, the night stretched on, and as they continued their rounds, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something bad. He had no idea then, but that first night with Sable would be the beginning of a dangerous journey, one that would change everything. And in that moment, as they moved past the ICU, Liam realized he wasn't just walking through the hospital with a dog. He was walking with a warning. The night stretched on, the soft hum of the hospital barely noticeable. Officer Liam Archer and Sable moved through the sterile hallways, their steps quiet. At first, everything seemed normal. The nurses were busy, the patients still, and the silence was comforting in its own way. But then, Sable stopped again. Her ears perked up, and her body stiffened. She was no longer the relaxed dog Liam had gotten used to. Something was off. "Sable?" Liam whispered, his voice low. He glanced around, trying to figure out what had her attention this time. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring at a corner of the ICU. There, lying unconscious in a hospital bed, was an elderly man. He seemed harmless enough, just another patient in the ward, but something about the way Sable was behaving didn't sit right. Her eyes narrowed, and her tail stood straight out behind her. Liam paused, unsure of what was happening. "What is it, girl?" he asked, reaching down to tug gently at the leash. But Sable didn't move. Her focus was fixed, unwavering. The room was quiet, save for the soft beeping of machines. Liam watched as Sable took a step forward, her eyes still locked on the frail old man in the bed. Her usual calm demeanor was gone. She was on edge. Her body language screamed alert, like she knew something he didn't. Liam glanced at the man's chart on the side of the bed. Lewis Gerald, 86, non-responsive. He was in a coma, just another patient with no family around. Everything seemed routine. But why was Sable acting like this? "Come on, girl," Liam said again, more firmly this time. "Let's go." But Sable didn't budge. She stood there, her gaze locked on the patient's medication tray. That's when Liam noticed it. The faintest trace of something near the bed. A syringe discarded on the tray just out of place. Liam felt his heart skip a beat. It was so small, so subtle, but Sable had spotted it immediately. His trained eyes caught it too now, a vial that didn't belong there. "Sable, what are you trying to tell me?" Liam whispered to himself. He was starting to get a bad feeling, something he couldn't shake. But what could it be? He had learned to trust Sable's instincts, but this was different. "Nothing to worry about, officer," came a nurse's voice from behind. It was Kayla again, the same nurse he'd spoken to earlier. "Everything's fine here. Routine meds." Liam turned to face her, trying to hide his concern. "Just making sure," he replied. His eyes lingered on Sable, who was still staring at the medication tray. Maybe it's nothing, he thought. But deep down, he knew. It wasn't nothing. Something was wrong. As he walked away, Sable's gaze never wavered. She stayed in that spot, watching, waiting. It was only the beginning. The night after Sable's strange behavior, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He knew, Sable. She was always spot on with her instincts. He trusted her more than anything, so when he went in for another shift, he decided to pay closer attention to the area she'd been fixated on. This time, they took a different route, avoiding the main corridors. Sable walked ahead of him, her steps light but measured. Her body, language was sharp, every muscle tense as if she could feel something lurking in the air. They passed by the ICU's usual sections, moving quietly through the less-traveled service hallway. Liam could feel the unease creeping in, but he stayed silent, waiting for Sable to lead the way. As they approached a small section of the ICU, Sable suddenly stopped again. Her head was raised, and her eyes narrowed in a way that made Liam's heart race. "What's wrong, girl?" Liam whispered, crouching down to her level. Sable didn't respond. She only stared at the bed ahead. At first, Liam thought it was another false alarm, but then he saw her body language shift. She wasn't just alert, she was fixated. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He followed her gaze to the bed at the far corner of the room. It was a woman in her 70s, frail and hooked up to machines. Her chest barely rose and fell, and the soft beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room. It seemed like just another patient, another part of the routine. But something about it felt different. Sable was giving him a clear sign that something was wrong, but it wasn't just her. Liam could feel it too. The whole atmosphere of the hospital had changed. The usual quiet, the soft glow of the fluorescent lights, even the murmur of the nurses outside seemed to fade. It felt like there was something hidden just beneath the surface, something everyone was trying to ignore. Liam stepped forward, but Sable didn't move. She stayed frozen, staring at the woman's bed. "Why are you so fixated on her, girl?" Liam muttered under his breath. "What's going on?" Sable's eyes flicked to the side, to the small medication tray next to the woman's bed. It was neatly arranged, but there was something about it that made Liam pause. A bottle of morphine was slightly tilted to the side, the label half worn. The sight made his stomach tighten. Just then, a nurse entered the room. Jeremy, the same nurse from the night before. He walked with that perfect rehearsed smile, but there was something in his eyes that Liam didn't trust. "Everything all right, Officer Archer?" Jeremy asked, his tone too smooth, too controlled. Liam nodded, but inside he wasn't sure anymore. "Sable's been a little restless," Liam said, his eyes never leaving the medication tray. Just making sure everything's all right. Jeremy didn't answer, his smile widening just a little too much. Liam's gut told him something was off, and once again, Sable's instincts had picked up on something he couldn't explain. As they left the room, Liam felt a chill. He had learned to trust Sable's instincts before, and tonight, more than ever, he knew something was being hidden. Liam and Sable had spent another restless night in the hospital. Each step, each hallway felt heavier than the last, as though the walls themselves were hiding something. But it wasn't just the silence of the hospital that unnerved Liam. It was Sable, the way she kept watching, sensing things he couldn't. And then there was Jeremy. Every time they crossed paths with him, something felt wrong. The nurse was always too calm, too perfect. His smile never wavered, his uniform always pressed and spotless, his movements measured. But the way Sable reacted around him told a different story. "Stay close, girl," Liam whispered to Sable as they walked toward the ICU again. Her body language was sharp, her eyes locked ahead as if she could already sense the danger that lay in the air. Every step she took was calculated, and when they entered the ward, she froze. Her posture was tense, ears pulled back. It was the same reaction as before. Liam glanced at the nurse station, and there he was, Jeremy. He was walking down the hallway, clipboard in hand, but this time his gaze met Liam's. That same fake practice smile appeared on his face. "Evening, Officer Archer," Jeremy said smoothly. "Routine patrol, I see." Liam nodded, trying to keep his composure. "Yeah, just checking things out, all good?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. But there was something in Jeremy's eyes that didn't match his words. It was as if he was waiting for something, watching them too closely. Sable growled softly under her breath, her stance still rigid. She wasn't buying it either. Liam felt the tension in the air, and it wasn't just Sable. There was something about Jeremy that felt off, like a lie hanging in the space between them. "Everything's fine," Jeremy replied with that same unnerving smile. "Just routine care for the patients. All meds logged, all charts in order. No issues here." Liam kept his eyes on him. "You sure about that?" he asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Jeremy's smile faltered for the briefest moment, but he quickly recovered. "Of course, everything's logged properly. It's just late-night checks, nothing to worry about." He chuckled, a little too loud, a little too forced. Sable's growl grew louder, her gaze never leaving Jeremy. The tension in the room was thick, and Liam couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was being hidden, something dangerous. "All right, just doing my job," Liam said, trying to act as normal as possible. But in his gut, he knew. He knew Sable was right. Jeremy was hiding something. As they walked away, Sable's pace quickened, and Liam followed. He didn't say anything, but his mind was racing. Why did Sable react that way every time Jeremy was near? And why did Jeremy always have an explanation, always have the perfect answer? Liam knew that this wasn't over. He had to dig deeper because he was sure now. Jeremy wasn't just a nurse. He was hiding something, and Sable was the only one who knew the truth. Night after night, Sable's behavior grew more intense, more focused. She was always alert, but lately her instincts had been laser-sharp, her attention drawn to one person, Jeremy. At first, Liam thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe Sable had picked up on something, anything. But now he was beginning to see a pattern. Every time something seemed off, Jeremy was there. Every time Sable reacted, Jeremy was in the area. Tonight, as they walked through the quiet hallways of the ICU, Sable stopped again. Her tail stiffened, her body tensed. She wasn't just alert. She was ready, as if bracing for something. Liam felt his stomach churn. He knew that look. She was onto something. "Not again," Liam muttered, watching her closely. He tried to ignore it, but deep down the feeling gnawed at him. They had already seen Jeremy twice this week, and both times, Sable had reacted in a way that couldn't be dismissed. Liam glanced toward the nurse's station. There he was again, standing at the counter with a clipboard, his smile as perfect as ever. "How's everything tonight?" Liam asked, trying to keep his voice casual. He didn't want to seem suspicious, but his gut told him something wasn't right. Jeremy glanced up and offered his usual polite smile. "Routine," he said smoothly. "Nothing out of the ordinary." His eyes lingered on Liam and Sable for just a moment too long. Liam could feel the unease building in him. Every time Jeremy spoke, it felt like he was trying to cover something up. Sable's low growl vibrated through the leash, her focus still on Jeremy. Liam sighed, not wanting to make a scene, but it was becoming impossible to ignore. "You all right, girl?" Liam whispered, giving her a reassuring pat, but she didn't move. Her gaze was locked on Jeremy like a hawk. It was clear that something was wrong, but Liam wasn't ready to make accusations. Not yet. As they walked past, Sable's eyes never left Jeremy. Liam could feel the weight of the silence between them. He couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening, but the staff treated Jeremy like a saint. He had the perfect record, the perfect smile. No one would believe him if he said anything. "Everything's fine," Jeremy said, his voice too smooth, too rehearsed. But Liam wasn't sure. How many more signs would he ignore? Every time Sable reacted, it felt like they were being led closer to something dangerous. But what was it? And how far did this go? With Sable's instincts guiding him, Liam knew they were getting closer to uncovering the truth. But the question was, how far would they have to go to expose what Jeremy was hiding? It was late when the hospital's usual hum began to shift. The quiet, once comforting, now felt oppressive, heavy in the air. Liam could feel it, the way the temperature seemed to drop, the way Sable's focus grew even sharper. Her body was tense, muscles coiled as though she could sense something was coming, something he wasn't ready for. They had made their rounds, checked the usual rooms, but Sable's behavior had changed. She was no longer walking beside him casually. Now she led the way, her eyes darting ahead, nose sniffing the air. Her movements were more purposeful, more intense. She was trying to tell him something. "Stay close, girl," Liam whispered, though he already knew she wouldn't stray far. She was the only one who could guide him through the feeling that gnawed at him, the creeping suspicion that something wasn't right. As they moved down a narrow corridor, Sable's pace slowed. Her head snapped to the left and she stared at a door at the end of the hall. It was unmarked, no sign, no explanation. Just a door in the middle of the hospital, tucked away in a place Liam had never noticed before. He stopped, feeling a tightness in his chest. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low, though Sable didn't respond. She simply stood, tail stiff, eyes locked on the door. Liam's heart rate quickened. He had been in this hospital for weeks now, and he knew the layout well. There was no reason for a door like this to be here, especially one that was locked. He felt his instincts kick in. Sable wasn't reacting like this for no reason. She had sniffed something dark, something dangerous. Why would this door be locked? Liam muttered to himself as he approached it cautiously. The air felt colder, almost suffocating. Sable's growl was low, barely audible, but Liam heard it clearly. It wasn't the usual warning growl she gave when she was on alert. This was something different. She was telling him that whatever was behind that door, it wasn't just routine, it was a threat. Liam reached out for the door handle, but Sable pulled him back with a firm tug on the leash. He looked down at her, her eyes filled with determination. "All right, we'll do this together," he whispered. He wasn't sure what he was about to face, but he couldn't ignore her. She had led him this far, and every time she had reacted like this, it had been for a reason. He took a deep breath. The cold, air biting at his skin, and slowly turned the handle. As the door creaked open, Liam's heart pounded in his chest. Whatever was behind it, Sable knew it wasn't good, and he was about to find out why. Liam's heart raced as the door creaked open, revealing a dark, cold room beyond. His breath caught in his throat and he stepped inside, following Sable's lead. The air was thick with something metallic, almost clinical. Sable's body was rigid, her eyes scanning the room with an intensity that only she could muster. Liam could feel the weight of the moment. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. They moved further into the room and Liam's gaze fell on a large industrial freezer. But it wasn't a medical freezer. There were no labels, no indication it was used for anything even remotely related to patient care. The freezer stood alone in the corner, its door slightly ajar. Sable's low growl vibrated through the leash as she moved toward it. Liam's pulse quickened, his instincts telling him that whatever was inside, it wasn't supposed to be here. "Sable, stay close," Liam whispered, but she was already ahead of him, sniffing at the edge of the freezer. With a deep breath, Liam approached cautiously, feeling the cold air seeping into his skin. He opened the door slowly, his hands trembling. The sight that met his eyes made his stomach drop. Inside the freezer there were dozens of syringes, all uncapped and lying haphazardly. Empty medication vials littered the shelves, their labels smeared and barely readable. The stark white of the vials stood in sharp contrast to the darkness of the room, as though they were a silent witness to something unforgivable. Liam stepped back, his mind racing. "What is this?" he muttered to himself. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a cover-up, a system of abuse he hadn't been able to see before. The pieces were finally falling into place. Sable had sensed it, led him straight to this moment. The door to the freezer slammed shut as Sable's growl grew louder. She was tense, her body rigid as she backed away from the freezer, eyes fixed on the door. Liam's chest tightened as realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Jeremy wasn't just a nurse. He was part of something much darker, something far more sinister than Liam had ever imagined. "Sable," Liam said, his voice shaky. "We've found it. He's been killing them." The weight of the words hung in the cold air. For the first time, Liam understood the depth of the danger he was in. Sable's growl echoed in the stillness, a reminder of the truth that had been buried in plain sight. As Liam turned to leave, he knew there was no turning back. He was on the trail of a killer, and this time, he wouldn't let him escape. Liam stood frozen in the cold room, the chilling discovery of the syringes and vials still echoing in his mind. His hands shook and Sable's growls were a constant reminder of the danger they were facing. He was processing everything, trying to piece it together, when suddenly the sharp sound of the hospital's intercom blared to life. "Code Blue, ICU, Ward 5. Cardiac arrest in progress. Immediate assistance needed." Liam's heart skipped a beat. Without a word, he turned toward Sable. She was already ahead of him, her body tense, her eyes locked on the exit. She had sensed something long before. He did. "Come on, girl," Liam muttered, trying to keep pace as they made their way down the hall. As they reached the ICU, the chaos of the emergency was unfolding. Nurses were rushing past, and doctors were preparing the defibrillator. At the center of it all was Jeremy, performing chest compressions with cold precision. His hands moved with calculated efficiency, his face impassive, almost too calm for someone trying to save a life. Liam's gut twisted. There was something off about the way Jeremy moved, the way he didn't seem truly concerned. Every time Jeremy touched the patient, something in Liam's mind screamed that this wasn't about saving lives. This was about control. Sable's body was completely still, her eyes trained on Jeremy. Her hackles were raised, her teeth bared, in a way Liam had never seen before. She let out a low, guttural growl, the warning clear. She was no longer watching the patient. She was watching Jeremy. "Stay close, girl," Liam whispered, his voice tight. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on him, the sense that something terrible was unfolding right in front of him. He moved closer to the bed where Jeremy continued his work, his gaze never leaving the patient's chest. But as Liam looked down at the elderly man, he saw it. A slight twitch of the lips, an unnatural rise in the chest as Jeremy pressed down almost too perfectly. It wasn't a life-saving move. It was too controlled, too deliberate. "Jeremy," Liam called out, his voice breaking through the tense silence. "What the hell are you doing?" Jeremy looked up, that same unnerving smile on his face. "Saving him, Officer Archer. Just doing my job." But Sable wasn't fooled. She lunged toward the bed, her growl escalating. She knew. She had already figured it out. Jeremy wasn't trying to save lives, he was taking them. Liam's chest tightened as the truth sank in. He was too late. Jeremy had already crossed the line, and for the first time, Liam understood just how dangerous this man really was. "Stop!" Liam shouted, but Jeremy didn't flinch. Sable's instincts had already led them to the ultimate betrayal. Jeremy was a killer, not a caregiver, and now, Liam had to stop him before he took another life. Liam's heart pounded as he stood there in the ICU, watching Jeremy work on the elderly patient. The calm, collected facade Jeremy had been putting up for so long was cracking. Every move he made, every word he spoke only deepened the suspicion that had been growing in Liam's mind. Sable stood beside him, her body tense, her eyes locked on Jeremy. The growl that had been constant in the background now stopped. She was watching, waiting for Liam to make his move. She knew it was time. Liam's hands trembled as he reached for his radio. His voice was steady, but inside, he felt the weight of the moment. "Hospital security to ICU Ward 3 immediately for staff detention pending investigation," he called out. His words echoed in the tense silence, and for the first time, Jeremy's calm demeanor slipped. Jeremy's eyes widened. His smile faltered, and the practiced, polite tone he'd used with Liam disappeared. The mask of control was gone, and fear began to seep through. "What are you doing, Archer?" he asked, his voice shaky. Sable took a step forward, growling low, her body in a stance that warned Jeremy that there was nowhere to run. Liam's gaze remained fixed on him. "I know what you've been doing. It's over, Jeremy." The silence in the ICU was deafening. Every nurse, every doctor in the room seemed to freeze. No one knew how to react. For a moment, it felt like time stood still. Jeremy looked around, his eyes darting toward the door, calculating his next move, but he was trapped. Liam didn't move an inch, his hand still gripping the radio. "You're done. You've hurt enough people," Liam said, his voice full of resolve. He could feel Sable's energy, her unyielding support, and for the first time he knew he wasn't alone in this fight. Jeremy's face turned pale as hospital security entered the room. They moved quickly, approaching Jeremy with authority. Liam didn't take his eyes off him. "You're under arrest," one of the officers said, and Jeremy didn't protest. He just stood there, too stunned to react. The truth was out, and there was no hiding anymore. As Jeremy was escorted out, Liam felt a weight lifting off his shoulders. It wasn't just about exposing a killer, it was about justice for the victims, for everyone who had suffered. The staff in the room seemed too shocked to speak. They had trusted Jeremy, believed in him, and now they were forced to face the ugly truth. But Liam knew the hardest part was over. The truth had been exposed, and justice was finally within reach. Sable stood tall beside him, her stance proud as if to say, "We did it." And for the first time, Liam allowed himself to believe that everything would be okay. The chaos of the night had finally settled. Jeremy was in custody, and the truth was out. As the hospital's staff began to process the shock of the revelations, things slowly returned to their routine. The machines beeped softly again. The footsteps of nurses and doctors echoed through the halls, and the air, once thick with tension, felt lighter. But Liam knew it would never be the same. Outside, near the entrance to the hospital, Liam stood, with Sable by his side. The first light of dawn began to break, casting a soft glow over the parking lot. The world was waking up, but in Liam's mind, everything had shifted. He looked down at Sable, who had quietly settled beside him, her head resting on her paws. Her amber eyes met his for a brief moment, and Liam felt a deep sense of gratitude. "Good job, girl," Liam whispered, his voice soft but filled with emotion. He rubbed the top of her head gently. She had done what no one else could. She had saved lives by trusting her instincts when no one else did. Liam had no doubt that Sable had sensed the darkness in Jeremy long before he did. She had led him to the truth, even when it seemed impossible to uncover. Sable didn't respond with her usual energy, but her presence spoke volumes. She was calm now, her work done. Liam knew she had been through so much with him, and together, they had uncovered a dangerous secret that no one had been brave enough to face. "You were right all along," Liam muttered. "You knew, didn't you? You knew before I did." As the sun continued to rise, casting its golden rays over the horizon, Liam allowed himself a moment to breathe. Despite everything that had happened, they had made a difference. They had stopped a killer. They had saved lives. For the first time in a long while, Liam felt a sense of peace wash over him. The horror they had uncovered was over. The darkness had been exposed. Sable, as always, remained by his side. And in that quiet moment, Liam knew that no matter what came next, he wouldn't have to face it alone. "It's over, girl," Liam said softly, his voice filled with relief. "We did it." Sable lifted her head just slightly as if in agreement, her eyes still focused on him. For all the terror and pain they had endured, they had done what needed to be done. And in the end, that was what mattered most.